it's exceedingly clear that, like, there's nothing really going on other than people protesting. So there is absolutely no reason for Donald Trump or Pete Hegseth to themselves raw over the idea of sending the National Guard here. It's literally just a show of force, and it's an effort of provocation and instigation. They are more so they're upset that what they're saying, the delusional version of reality that they are trying to force onto normal people and trick them into believing so that they can do this authoritarian crackdown. They're upset that that's not actually the reality we live in. They're intentionally trying to inflame tensions and make it so that it becomes a quote-unquote violent interaction. I'm essentially here to tell you a bunch of stuff you already know. If you've been following news at all, which if you watch me, you probably are at least a little bit, things are not going very well when it comes to democracy, when it comes to people's civil rights and whatnot. That's always been the case, even before this current administration, but it's gotten a lot worse. On June 7th, a couple days ago, 9 p.m., Pete Hegseth, who is yet to be effective at all, formerly being a Fox News host and now being head of the Department of Defense or whatever, he wrote, "Violent mob assaults on ICE and federal law enforcement are designed to prevent the removal of criminal illegal aliens from our soil, a dangerous invasion facilitated by criminal cartels, aka foreign terrorist organizations, and a huge national security risk. Under President Trump, violence and destruction against federal agents and federal facilities will not be tolerated. It's common sense. The Department of Defense is mobilizing the National Guard immediately to support federal law enforcement in Los Angeles, and if violence continues, active duty Marines at Camp Pendleton will also be mobilized. They are on high alert." So this is over a bunch of protests against ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, a relatively new branch of governmental activities that essentially just goes around and brutalizes, brown people that they don't like and suspect to be immigrants for not very much reason. They don't really do much good. They just do a lot of harm. And it's a big waste of your tax dollars, and a lot of people in California have figured that out. And they're protesting against it, especially lately under the Trump 2 admin. There's been a lot more wanton arrests and whatnot across the board, but particularly from ICE when it comes to people protesting or just generally, people going to their immigration court dates and whatnot, actually trying to do things the legal way and then getting arrested, detained by ICE and then deported and shipped to El Salvador or wherever after the fact. They've been going after low-hanging fruit because it seems like ICE, nobody wants to work anymore. So instead of, actually trying to do what is ostensibly their job, which is, keep bad people out of the country, quote-unquote, they've just been, sitting outside of courtrooms and arresting people after their immigration court appearances. It's not a good thing, and it's essentially, a force that's not from these areas and is kind of just invading to cause harm to people for no real reason. A lot of immigrants, obviously, people know, do a lot of labor in this country, especially illegal, quote-unquote, immigrants, undocumented immigrants. They do a shitload of labor that the broader labor pool in the United States of America don't really want to do. And a lot of capital owners will prefer to hire immigrants because it's easier for them to pay them less money. They don't have to pay them the minimum wage. They can just threaten to deport them if they ask for a raise or better working conditions. So it's a lot better for the bottom line of a lot of companies to hire undocumented immigrants rather than the legal citizen that might be watching this, because they actually have to abide by a variety of rules and regulations to do somewhat okay by you, but still exploit you for your labor and try to make you work in bad conditions for very low wages. But it's even worse for immigrants. Undocumented immigrants don't enjoy any benefits from our social safety net, even though they pay hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars into our tax revenues as a country through sales tax and a variety of other means. The amount of money that they pay, undocumented immigrants pay into, or immigrants broadly pay into the United States of America through taxes, is less than the amount of taxes that the top 1% of the country evades by looking for loopholes and buying people in Congress to get tax cuts and whatnot and deregulate a variety of things in the financial sector that makes it easier for them to pay less in tax and therefore, give the country less money to make sure Mima doesn't go hungry because she can't work anymore because she's too goddamn old. There's a lot of really good positive stuff on that front, as always. So this was June 7th, 2025. A lot of the people protesting ICE for brutalizing suspected immigrants those protesters are, of course, doing the right thing and trying to obstruct the ICE raids and whatnot. But obviously, the Republicans don't want that. They want mass deportation. They were very happy to say that, and they continue. The Overton window on that has moved. Before any kind of talk about mass deportation, just because of the logistical issues with that and the amount of violence that it would require, is not really palatable, but now it's a little bit more palatable because the Overton window, the room for respectability when it comes to certain ideas being discussed, has shifted so far to the far right that they can just campaign on it and win elections, unfortunately, especially with a essentially dead opposition party, the Democrats, that are ripe for a hostile takeover of people who actually give a shit about people and want to do right by them. Anyway, Donald Trump on the 8th of June at 2 p.m. chimed in after a bunch of backlash from Pete Hegseth popping off with a once great American city, Los Angeles, has been invaded and occupied by illegal aliens and criminals. Now violent insurrectionist mobs are swarming and attacking our federal agents to try to stop our deportation operations. But these lawless riots only strengthen our resolve. I am directing Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, and Attorney General Pam Bondi, just like a who's who of people who got participation trophies to get into the positions they are and aren't actually in any way having the prerequisites to actually be in these positions and be effective in them. Just a bunch of right-wing DEI hires, I suppose, in coordination with all other relevant departments and agencies to take all such action necessary to liberate Los Angeles from the migrant invasion and put an end to these migrant riots. Order will be restored, the illegals will be expelled, and Los Angeles will be blah, 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 blah. So it's not a migrant invasion, and the riots are not migrant riots. A lot of the people in the protests that don't become riots until the police show up and decide to start rioting and brutalizing people for protesting the very obvious injustice that they're seeing with ICE deporting people wantonly with no actual regard for people's safety or like actual due process. People doing the correct thing, the just thing. It's a lot of citizens that are legal citizens, if that should matter to you. It's not migrant riots. But of course, this is the way that they want to paint the picture to make the American people who have been trained through propaganda and misinformation and anti-intellectual efforts to fear anything that doesn't look like them and buy into a lot of lies that the Republicans will spread in order to stoke fear in people to get them to vote for them so that they can gain power without actually trying to do anything good by the worker and actually end up doing bad by the worker by passing tax cuts for the wealthy, making it so that multinational corporations can pay their workers less, standing in the way of any minimum wage hikes, deregulating a variety of industries so that your work conditions are less safe, etc., etc. A bunch of things that make the wealthy a lot more wealthy, even though they have more money than God and they don't know what to do with it. That's the what they want to do with that power, and they found out that because it's a long, tried and true strategy for the conservative and regressive movements to, just make the workers fight amongst themselves and get mad at other people that they've been propagandized to hate instead of focusing their ire against the wealthy. And this is not good. Sending the National Guard, which, unless the Insurrection Act is put into play by Donald Trump, the National Guard can't actually make arrests. They can only protect ICE agents when it comes to them making arrests, when it comes to immigration-related things. But it's an unnecessary escalation because if you see any actual footage, here we have Hassan who was there, of the protests, it's really not anything out of the ordinary when it comes to protests. People are walking, chanting, holding signs. There are some people, like very rarely, like exceedingly rarely, that might be doing things that you consider to be violent, i.e. destruction of property in the form of like sometimes there's a car that's been lit on fire, glass that's been broken, stuff like that. The grand majority of times, so like people are even coming up to him and like getting pictures with him because like it's not. If this was like a violent war zone that Trump and the Republicans are painting it to be, then people wouldn't be coming up to him looking for a goddamn picture. It's kind of like a block party, but it's obviously a protest to stop ICE from essentially acting as Donald Trump's Gestapo, his secret police, and just rounding people up wantonly and sending them to El Salvador with no due process. They're fighting for civil rights here by protesting that injustice. It's like it's exceedingly clear that like there's nothing really going on other than people protesting. So there is absolutely no reason for Donald Trump or Pete Hegseth to stroke themselves raw over the idea of sending the National Guard here. It's literally just a show of force, and it's an effort of provocation and instigation. They are more so they're upset that what they're saying, the delusional version of reality that they are trying to force onto normal people and trick them into believing so that they can do this authoritarian crackdown. They're upset that that's not actually the reality we live in. They're intentionally trying to inflame tensions and make it so that it becomes a quote-unquote violent interaction. And in the grand majority of the time, if you even look back to the BLM protests in 2020, the grand majority of the time that violence occurs in these protests are because of the police, are because of law enforcement instigating violence. It's incredibly rare that the protesters are the ones doing that, because the grand majority of people who are protesting are just normal people who see an injustice and are doing the righteous, morally correct, logical, and even pious, if you're religious, thing by fighting for people who have it worse than them on their behalf, by trying to stop an injustice that they see. And obviously, you can't have that if you're a Republican or conservative, because you want to harm people. You want people to get hurt. Because the only way you've been told by Republican propaganda that your life is getting better is by you witnessing people that you don't like's lives getting worse. It's been a long, long project to form the brains of conservatives and regressive voters in this country to think that way, but they do. That's why owning the libs was such a strong mover for people to become radicalized to the right. If you can make it so that the people that you've been told are our enemies are worse off, and you can even make a show of that, if you've been propagandized to think that, oh, my life gets better if their life gets worse, then all the Republicans have to do at that point is make sure the undesirables' lives get worse, aka black and brown people, immigrants, queer people, women, anybody with a capacity for pregnancy, disabled people, any of the people that a variety of fascist regimes of the past ended up doing a lot to thin the numbers of, if you will, find to be undesirable. It's the same thing, man. It's literally the same. And it unfortunately works on a lot of Republicans, because a lot of the time they've been tricked and don't know any better, and sometimes they're just evil people. But people are just hanging out. They're protesting an injustice. The only time you're seeing any kind of violence is when the cops throw, gas canisters at the crowd, use chemical weapons against peaceful protesters in order to get them to disperse, or shoot them with rubber bullets, which are less than lethal munitions that they're meant to shoot at the ground and have ricochet at people as a method of crowd dispersal. But instead, a lot of these dumbasses, a lot of these overpaid, bloated, pig dog police officers will just actively shoot people with them directly, which can be lethal, which can take people's eyes out, and has in the past. It has killed people in the past as well. That's why they're called less than lethal munitions, not non-lethal. And they're only less than lethal primarily if you use them correctly, and a lot of the times the police won't. I was there, the cops absolutely were escalating. They were shooting rubber bullets into people and beanbags. Yeah, the only time that any violence is going to pop off at a protest is if there are counter-protesters. There's often a lot of counter-protesters like the Proud Boys and a variety of other people that don't live in the areas that they go to counter-protest at, like in the BLM protests in 2020. A lot of the counter-protesters there would come into cities because that's just where a lot of protests are going to happen, because there's a higher volume of people. They don't live there because they're scared to death of cities because of the propaganda they've been told, and because they're antisocial, maladjusted weirdos that, can hopefully be saved, but unfortunately, they have some difficulty with it. They end up coming from the suburbs and even the fucking sticks and go to the cities in order to cause trouble. That can start a lot of violence because they will instigate it. They usually have people filming them as well. And then when people respond in self-defense to the instigation of the counter-protesters in that instance, that gets selectively clipped so it looks like the people defending themselves that were protesting peacefully, it looks like they're the ones instigating it when that's not the case. This has been a tactic that people like Andy Ngo, etc., will, signal boost and whatnot. The deceptively edited videos of the response to counter-protests. The other option is the police starting the violence, because they're allowed to be violent. There are, in theory, regulations and restrictions on what they're allowed to do to people, but they don't care. They never really have. You know, the genesis of policing and its evolution to modern policing has never really been about protecting people. It's more so been about protecting the wealthy's assets, you know, their property and whatnot. Either way, they are allowed to use violence, and they often do it without any regard for any kind of pushback, because a lot of carve-outs have been made in the law to allow them to do so. So they will freely just brutalize people protesting and exercising their civil liberties and their individual rights to want an address of grievances and to protest in order to get that, what this country was founded on. Police will often instigate it because the culture of policing and its inception, at the very root of it, has never been about helping people. It's never been giving a shit about any of the people in this protest. They need there to be violence. The police are usually the best way to instigate that. A lot of right-wing counter-protester pigs will often try to start shit as well. But it's not, there's not a lot of bait being taken. And also, this protest is a bit more spontaneous, the one previous to this day and this day. So it's usually going to be more difficult for any kind of counter-protest to be organized and stuff like that. So it's just people standing around, chanting, moving in certain directions, stopping traffic because they want their voices to be heard and their grievances to be addressed. But they need to make it look like it's a riot. So that's an effort of what sending the National Guard is to do. It's propagandistic. It's a show of force. They want there to be National Guard there because people are like, oh wow, if they're sending the National Guard in, then there must be a good reason for it. There isn't. They're manufacturing one. So the governor, Gavin Newsom, who is angling for a presidential run for the Democratic Party, who is not a good guy, but isn't Trump, so I guess that's good enough for some people, has had a lot of words, a lot of decent rhetoric on all of this going on. Not a lot of good action, though, unfortunately, and I don't know that we'll expect much from him anyway. But because positioning himself against Donald Trump in this way is good for his presidential ambitions, the rhetoric has been somewhat decent. Governor Gavin Newsom, June 7, 2025, 5:14 p.m. The federal government is moving to take over the California National Guard and deploy 2,000 soldiers. The move is purposefully inflammatory and will only escalate tensions. That's correct. That is the point. That is why they're doing it. LA authorities are able to access law enforcement assistance at a moment's notice. We are in close coordination with the city and county, and there is currently no unmet need. The Guard has been admirably serving LA throughout recovery. This is the wrong mission and will erode public trust. June 7, 2025, 7 p.m., the federal government is taking over the California National Guard and deploying 2,000 soldiers in Los Angeles. Not because there is a shortage of law enforcement, but because they want a spectacle. Don't give them one. Never use violence. Speak out peacefully. A lot of this shit is shit he has to say as a governor, but I'm pretty sure it's also what he believes. The whole idea that, nonviolent protest is the only way to get things done. There's always a yin and a yang. There's always a Malcolm X to a Martin Luther King Jr. A lot of the violence, like I said, that will happen in protests are self-defense when it comes to police brutalizing protesters or counter-protesters trying to start shit. It's almost overwhelmingly in self-defense because it's almost overwhelmingly the case that it is a version of self-defense to protest for an address of grievances, not wanting ICE to be able to just, with masks on and no identification, yoink people and send them to El Salvador for no goddamn reason without due process, Normal people don't tend to like that idea of a secret police going all around and being able to disappear people. That's not great. A lot of people don't like that. If you ask the average person how they feel about that, they're not going to like it too much. So it's a version of self-defense and community defense to do protests like this and try to obstruct ICE's criminal actions. The idea that it's always pushed by Democrats because they have to say it because of optics, never use violence, kind of assumes that violence will be used by the protesters, which is almost never the case. It's never protesters instigating violence unless there are agent provocateurs like feds in the protest trying to get people to start shit, and often people can sniff those people out. And even if there isn't, even if it's just a dumbass trying to start shit, a lot of the times protesters will try to eject them from the crowd because it's clear they want something to happen. There's that old famous clip during the BLM protests of that dumbass streamer who was live streaming it and was trying to get a bunch of people to flip over a car so he could get it on a stream. That was actually a really funny video, and I kind of want to watch it again because it's good. Fuck, it's from a channel called George Floyd Riots. Jesus Christ.
Oh! Can you flip this over?
Yeah.
Can you flip it over?
What? Are you kidding me?
Bro said, what?
Oh! Can you flip this over? Can you flip it over?
Like, this guy is probably not a federal agent, I have to say. He's probably just a dumbass who's trying to instigate violence for clips or whatever. But that's gonna be a problem for protesters who are there trying to organize for and address of grievances, because it'll make them look bad if it actually happens. If a person like this is allowed to get other people to do so-called violent things on their own behalf, which I don't think flipping a car is technically, what a lot of people would consider to be violence. Maybe it's, property damage or whatever. This would only hurt the protest's goals. And therefore, a person like this just can't be allowed to be here. So people would just shame them and get them the hell out of there like you're about to see.
Over?
What?
Okay.
Are you kidding me? You're asking us to flip over the truck?
Okay, no.
We do not instigate.
Okay,
We do not instigate because it comes back on the black and brown people.
Flip truck?
No, just forget
We do
about
not
it.
instigate.
This man just asked us to flip over the truck with his camera on.
No. I don't throw it down. What is it doing?
Bro, he's literally spinning.
What?
Bro is in the spin cycle.
Hold it down. Wait. What's going on?
This exact problem right now.
What's this?
Hold it down.
No.
And now he's running. And now he's gone. And as well he should be. That's good practice. If there are people that you notice are just doing dumb shit, a lot of the times in protests, those people just kind of like get shoved away, usually through shame. They end up leaving because they don't want to be dealing with that. The idea that like you always have to reinforce that, never use violence, never ever use violence, is annoying, but it's for optics. It's just a corner that they've been painted into. So Governor Newsom, continues, Los Angeles, don't take Trump's bait. Trump wants chaos and he's instigated violence. Those who assault law enforcement or cause property damage will risk arrest. Stay peaceful, stay focused, don't give him the excuse he's looking for. And then joined LAPD, LASD, and state emergency officials in LA as we respond to protests provoked by chaos from Washington. I think this is decent rhetoric, because he's not focusing the negativity and ire toward the protesters, even if he's not incredibly good on immigration shit to begin with, and a lot of the protesters there don't particularly like Gavin Newsom. At the very least, rhetorically speaking, he's making the enemy Donald Trump and his administration, which is good. We're here to keep the peace, not play into Trump's political games. Now, obviously, a big reason why he's doing this is because he wants to be president for the Democrats at some point, and positioning himself against Trump in this way is good, and it's a good show of power. In the broader scheme of things, I think for the Trump administration, this is a big gamble. Trying to cause something here, having it be the case that a protest like this, that they're saying are riots, even though it's just people standing around and protesting, chanting, looking for an address of grievance, claiming that this is a riot, a violent riot, and then sending in the National Guard. It's gonna make you look weak if it's not actually necessary. It's gonna make the Trump administration look weak. So they need there to be violence in order to justify it, because they want an authoritarian crackdown and they want the pretext to be able to do it. The problem is that protesters aren't really giving in, and they shouldn't. And why I think it's a gamble is that it's going to show an immense amount of weakness from Donald Trump. Like, what are you afraid of? You're afraid of people enacting their civil rights and civil liberties to protest against injustice? You're so scared of people holding signs and chanting against the actions that you are knowingly committing? You're so afraid of ideas that are different from yours that you're going to send in the National Guard and take over the California National Guard outside of the wishes of the governor and the mayor there? It's an absurd overreaction, and it makes you look like a bitch. I do believe it's also the case that, like, National Guard reservists are not the kind of lunatic, warrior culture kind of hogs that ICE and the police are. Like, ICE are like literal feral hogs that are excited to do cruel things to brown people and anybody that they've been given permission to disappear. Police are really not much better, but they have like a veneer of respectability for a lot of people because of propaganda and whatnot. But National Guard are military. They have military training. They're supposed to be more disciplined than that. They get more training than ICE or the police do. And because of this, you wouldn't expect them to be as gung-ho about roughing up protesters or even trying to instigate violence as the ICE or police officers are. And a lot of them might even disagree with why they're even being brought there to begin with. As a member of the military, you are within your rights to stand against what you see as an unlawful order and, make your claims against that, often in court, for why you're going to disobey these orders. Because you're not supposed to follow unlawful orders. A lot of the people who are reservists are often going to be living in the areas that they're reservists in. And because of that, they might even have other jobs within the communities that they're in and have more of a connection to their communities than, say, the police would or ICE would, because it's most often the case that the police and ICE agents don't live in the areas that they're operating within. They don't have a connection to the community. They're an occupying force. And because of that, the community doesn't really want them there. But when it comes to National Guard reservists, a lot of them that might actually have a broader connection to the community won't want to see harm done to it because of that connection. And they may be less likely to actually go with the ICE agents and the police and go along with their wanton violence against the protesters. It's not to say that they might necessarily disobey the orders, but they might not be, as compliant as they could be. And especially if it's the case that they see that they're being brought out there for literally nothing, for no reason at all, and their time is just being wasted. They're probably not going to like the administration for doing that. So it's a big gamble when it comes to the Trump administration doing this. And I think the big problem is that, Trump, Pete Hegseth, and particularly Stephen Miller, the skinhead that has a big position in the government, he's a white supremacist. He doesn't want non-white people to be in the country or have any kind of power in the country. He wants them to be like second-class citizens or whatever. Because he's in the husband chair, when his wife is enjoying, the presence of another man, he has nothing else going on. The only thing he has is wanting to exercise this kind of fantastical fascist crackdown on a variety of brown people and their sympathizers that he doesn't like and finds icky or whatever. It's leading him not to making logical decisions, but rather decisions based on emotion. Decisions based on bullshit, essentially. He already looks evil. I think if the media allows for this kind of bullshit snafu to hurt the Trump administration in their coverage, Stephen Miller should be a big part of that. And people will notice that, this dude literally looks like a villain. He literally looks like a villain. And the shit he wants and talks about is literally villainous. And that's not going to look good for them either. The overplaying of their hand here, I think, is a combination of those forces. And hopefully it does not work out very well for them. Also, I thought this was pretty cool. The importance of the tear gas diffuser. It's gotta feel good as fuck for the gas canister, man. Look at this. They have one of those water jugs. For those water coolers. And you have a heat protectant glove. Because the canister is hot. I'm not exactly sure what is in the diffuser. There seems to be a liquid in there. It's gotta feel good for the gas canister to be in there, though. It's probably like a jacuzzi. Pretty cool. I just thought it was neat. Even the Aussies are in the crosshairs, it would seem. LAPD fired rubber bullets at Australian journalists.
The standing off this situation has now rapidly deteriorated. The LAPD moving in on horseback, firing rubber bullets at protesters.
By the way, just the same way that police dogs are victims, so are police horses. No horse should be forced to carry an American police officer around, man. Especially not in the streets in these conditions. It's no place for a horse. Don't bring your pets to a protest.
Moving them on through the heart of LA.
You just shut the fuck.
Literally just aimed at her. The fucking hog. Look at him. He's just looking. He's like, oh, look at that. There's a literal news reporter. It's literal press recording us being essentially caricatures of evil. Let me just actually contemplate it and then raise my weapon and shoot them directly. Wouldn't that be funny? How far down is this motherfucker aiming? Where's the barrel? That's not aimed at the ground, brother. That's not aimed at the ground. People have had bone fractures because of direct hits by rubber bullets. People have lost eyes because of direct hits from rubber bullets. They're meant to be ricocheted off the ground.
You just shut the fuck up. You okay?
I'm good.
I wonder why they did that. It's almost like they know they look bad doing what they're doing, and they don't want anybody to film it. Now, obviously, that's a difficult task because a lot of people will be live streaming it. It's hard to pretend that this is like a violent protest when so many people are just like going live on Instagram Live, Twitch, YouTube, Facebook Live, and filming it from their own perspective as a protester from their fucking iPhone, or in this case, a live streamer with a live stream backpack, Marsh doing the most, carrying the fucking backpack. It's really hard to pretend that this is an actual violent protest on the side of protesters doing the violence, and it's really easy for people to see through the lie and recognize that it's actually the police that are causing the violence. It's actually the ICE officers that are doing violence initially, which is being protested. It's incredibly easy for people with eyeballs to see, and it requires a lot of propaganda and sticking your head in the sand and essentially cucking yourself out to the Republican Party and the mega wealthy that control them to ignore it, to pretend that's not the case, and to fall into the lies that they tell you after you've been told the actual correct information, after you've borne witness to the actual reality that's laid out in front of you. Most normal, reasonable people can understand this, and that's why seeing the police murder of George Floyd by Derek Chauvin, it activated them. It activated a lot of people that might not otherwise be activated and caused some of the biggest protests that we've seen in our, in contemporary United States. And then all the subsequent protests, it was very easy for a lot of people to see all of the police brutality on display, and the wanton police brutality as well. They responded to a protest about police brutality and wanting police brutality to stop by brutalizing the protesters. They don't know how to do anything else. Hammers and nails and whatnot. And it's the same thing here. The entire point of the police is to use their monopoly on violence to maintain control and order, in the case of the United States of America, protect the wealthy. Sometimes they might do good by the average citizen, but the majority of the time they're just protecting the wealthy and their assets and their property. When it comes to ICE, the whole point of ICE is to utilize their monopoly on violence, especially now that they've been given so much more power to just black bag people and disappear people with no due process. The whole point of ICE as an administration is a violent one. And if that's all you know, as an ICE agent or as a police officer, especially given the culture of all the other people that are working with you, that don't even see these protesters, black and brown people, immigrants as human beings, they're going to respond to any protest against them with more violence. Because what else do they know how to do? They don't know how to do anything else. Luckily, they're a very minoritarian movement. They don't have numbers on their side. They have the overwhelming military might and infrastructural might of the United States government and state governments, but they don't have sheer numbers. They are outnumbered by people that are doing the right thing, protesting against an injustice that they see and wanting it to stop, doing the logical, the moral, the justifiable, the pro-justice, and even the pious thing by wanting the ICE actions to stop. It's very easy for people to see that now, and hopefully it becomes easier and easier. On Truth Social, Donald J. Trump. This was posted June 8th, 2025 at 9 p.m., an hour ago, time of filming. Looking really bad in LA, bring in the troops. This is not the same time. You imagine as the night goes on, more and more people go home. Bring in the troops for this, man. For what, bro? People marching with signs? Chanting? What are you so afraid of? He also wrote, Jim McDonnell, the highly respected LAPD chief, just stated that the protesters are getting very much more aggressive, and that he would have to reassess the situation as it pertains to bringing in the troops. He should right now. Don't make these thugs get away with this. Make America great again. Does anybody have a link to a live feed? I just want to see what it looks like at time of filming, 10 p.m. We got ABC 7. They got a bird in the air. See a bunch of cops standing around. Like, what are the troops supposed to be doing here? You send the troops in to do what? jerk off the police? Play Ookie Cookie in the fucking intersection? Oh, look at this! Oh, guys, look! Oh, look, guys, there's actually violence happening. See, look at this, look at this. We look over here. Let's see. There's a gas canister. Surely a protester threw that, right? Surely these munitions, they're coming from the protesters. No, they're coming from the cops, dumbass. Oh, look at all this violence. These less than lethal munitions being expended with your taxpayer dollars. We need the entire might of the military to come down on Los Angeles. Because clearly these cops can't handle it on their own. That are literally just standing in a line. Every now and again, shooting rubber bullets toward people. Or firing tear gas. Like, there's not even any protesters that I can even see in frame. It's just the cops jerking off. Oh, but no, we gotta bring in... It's looking really bad, guys. We gotta bring in the troops, man. What a fucking pussy. Sucks to have a cuck president. Several administrations in a row, man.